I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth.
Boom. All right. Let's tell the stories. We'll go home, have a nice soup. It'll be good.
All right.
And I want to start this out by saying thank you to our newest patrons on Patreon. I want to give a shout out to Alicia Beam, Kathleen King, and also Amy. I'm sorry you didn't leave your last name, so just Amy, but you know who you are. So
Amy the Ghost Girl.
Yes. Okay. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm Chris Susi.
And we're going to talk about Savannah's favorite green space, Forsyth Park. Woohoo! The pretty face of Savannah with a very dark underbelly.
Actually, that's pretty accurate.
It has very a very accurate.
Dark underbelly.
Yeah. We've talked about Forsyth Park multiple times in many different episodes, but we felt that it was important to talk about a bunch of things about Forsyth Park because there's kind of a different story for every corner of the park.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you have the Forsyth Park Inn, which is on the west side of the park. Then you have the old Telfair Hospital on the south end of the park. Then you have the old Candler Hospital and the Candler Oak and the tunnels. So we're going to talk about all of that. So which one do you want to start with, Chris? Pick your poison.
Gosh.
Go ahead.
Like,
I think that we should start with a good old-fashioned ghost story, and that lies within the Forsyth Park Inn.
that was going to be my suggestion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree. Little Lottie, which is the spirit of the Forsyth Park Inn, she's a very interesting spirit because a lot of her story is kind of based in this folkloric, like, sort of telling. So Little Lottie lived with her, if we're looking at it from a standpoint of her biological family, she was living with her aunt, her uncle, and her biological mother. And they spent half of the year in Savannah at the home that is now the Forsyth Park Inn, and then they spent the other half of the year in Nova Scotia. Now, when little Lottie was born, her mother was a single mother. And at that time, it was a big no-go when you were a single mother. You were not ever going to live like a life that was very good in the sense of things. You were going to have a lot of hardships just innately from being a single mother, and the judgment that comes with that. So to ensure that little Lottie was going to have a good life, the sister of the biological mother, her aunt, and the brother-in-law, her uncle, they would act as the parents of little Lottie, and the way they would keep the biological mother in little Lottie's life was that she was going to live with them as her aunt. And they had no intentions of ever telling her this because, there was no reason in their minds. And that was their plan. Now, where the story kind of gets interesting is one year they were in Savannah. They usually spent their summer or their winters in Savannah. And little Lottie was walking down the hall, and she hears a woman, like, boo-hoo crying, like, sobbing, and she couldn't figure out why. So she goes to the room where she kind of pinpoints the noise, and she peeks in and sees her aunt sitting on her father's lap, and she's crying and sobbing to him. So little Lottie, not knowing this, that this is her biological mother, she thought the aunt was trying to break up the family. And so she decided to take matters into her own hands. And the way the story goes is that she went out to Forsyth and picked oleander leaves and took it in and put it in a tea. And she brought the tea to her aunt to soothe her nerves because she's like, I heard you crying. Here's some tea to help you calm down. And suddenly The aunt falls dead, obviously. But she was a young, healthy woman, so it was kind of curious to everyone how she could have possibly died so suddenly. But eventually little Lottie would come forward because she was very proud of what she did, because she thought she saved her family from being broken up by this evil woman. And so she tells her mother and father, and she says, this is what I did. And then they tell her exactly what she had done. And the news of I think it was a combination of finding out that it was her biological mother that she had always thought was her aunt, but it was actually her mother. And she's the reason that her biological mother is now dead, drove little Lottie into madness. And she would end up spending the rest of her life in a mental institution because she could not function.
Do we know which mental institution?
Do you know which one it is? I don't know if I've ever heard an exact name.
No.
I can Google it.
Of the time, because Candler became a mental institution far too late for that, which is another interesting thing about Forsyth, was that Candler was a mental institution for decades. Nope, I don't think I have a name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like we've said in many different stories about Savannah, a lot of things get muddied up with.
Yeah, I almost think that the story suggests that it was away. It was not in Savannah locally. She was carted
sent off.
Yeah.
Exiled.
Yeah.
She became a Yamauba.
I mean, kind of.
If you listen to our other podcast, From One to Wicked, you would know what that is.
Yes. So the thing is, though, with little Lottie is she's an interesting spirit because she's allegedly transient, and she spends the winters in Savannah at the Forsyth Park Inn, and then she's also seen at this other hotel that is in Nova Scotia, that they allegedly see the same spirit, and it's during the same times of year that little Lottie would have lived in those areas. And so we actually, JT and I used to live in a building right next door to the Forsyth Park Inn. And my parents would often stay at the Forsyth Park Inn when they came to visit because obviously it was literally right next door. It made sense. So I got to know a couple of the employees there and whatnot. And they would tell me about, this rocking horse that's up in the attic, that they always kind of know that little Lottie's back because the rocking horse starts moving on its own. And that was kind of always the indication. But that house, it's creepy. When you get in there, we talked about in the last...
It's beautiful, though.
It's gorgeous. It is a wonderful bed and breakfast to stay in. If you do come to Savannah and you're looking for something a little bit more like that, it's absolutely delightful, and the employees are wonderful, but it is creepy. I stayed in one of the rooms that's towards, I believe it's considered the basement area, but they have a couple rooms down that way that are tucked away, sort of. And you could just feel like something was down there with you.
Basement ghost.
I heard an old-fashioned phone ringing one time while I was down there. When I first moved into the apartment that JT and I ended up living in together, it was just me. So my dad and I came down, and we were going to renovate it and stuff. And so I was staying in the room by myself, and I heard the old-fashioned phone going off, and then I heard silver clanking. But when I opened the door, there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And it sounded like an employee was kind of hustling and bustling down there, but there's nobody. And then I also saw the figure of a woman in my bathroom, which I know Chris hates bathroom ghosts.
No bathroom ghosts.
But
Hashtag no bathroom ghosts.
No bathroom
Hashtag
ghosts.
No bathroom.
And if you're wondering what room that is, just ask about the room with the dog wallpaper. That's the room. Yeah. But I saw a woman down there. I saw the phone, or I heard the phone ringing and the metal clanking, and those are about the experiences that I had. But there's been numerous reports of little Lottie still hanging out in the courtyard area where people get married and things like that.
One of the main reasons I believed you when we first started dating, and you were like, I see dead people and stuff. One of the main things that made me believe you is that you never over exaggerate your ghost stories. You're never like, and I saw him there and he was bleeding from his eyes or whatever. You're always just like, it's just a phone ringing. That's it.
Yeah,
I
that's
was like,
about it.
I was like, okay. I mean, that's a weird flex, but okay. You know? Like, heard that and agree.
Because, well, that's kind of how it goes for most paranormal experiences. At
For
least
real paranormal experiences.
well, the ones that happen to me, it's usually kind of mundane.
If you're used to it,
yeah,
it's mundane. If you're not, if you're just sitting there and you've never had a single ghostly thing happen, and you look over and there's a woman standing there, you might,
panic,
more emphasis to it.
Yeah,
you might be quick to be like, there was there, and all that good stuff.
And her hair stood up, and she charged at me. No, she was just chilling. She was just hanging out in the bathroom.
So, be sure to check out the room with the dog wallpaper, right?
They'll know what you're talking about. Like, seriously. It's poodles, I believe.
It's poodles.
It's poodles. And
Oh
there's
my
like
God.
this
At
corner.
least you know that the room is hypoallergenic.
Right. Well, and the reason why they'll know is because there's this one corner in the bathroom where the wallpaper overlaps, and it looks like one poodle is humping another poodle.
Dope.
And they pointed it out to me when I stayed in there.
They point that out?
They did.
Wow.
No, that
Real
is
mom
service
and pop
right
shop.
That
there.
is service.
That's service, because you wouldn't want to miss that.
You know.
But this is after a couple times I'd stayed there, so they knew me at this point. So
That's funny.
But yes,
That's funny.
One of the interesting things about Lottie is she is seen as a child. She's seen as a little girl ghost when she lived to be an old woman.
Oh.
She died an old woman, but the spirit of Lottie is a child. And some people would say that it was the moment that her mind broke. That was the end of Lottie as she existed. But it does go with a lot of the stories that we've talked about before. Ghosts can inhabit multiple places, multiple locations, and it is about the spirit's actions that kind of hold it in place. And so she appears as a girl because that was where her experience of the place was at its most vibrant. And worth noting, a woman was murdered there. So, a lot of times when people see a full-grown woman in the building, they're thinking that they are also seeing Lottie, but it's a good chance that they're seeing Lottie's mother, who was murdered there. So, it's interesting because the stories, it's a perfectly crafted story. So perfectly crafted that it's worthy of skepticism. But I don't care. It's a good story.
Yeah, right?
You're telling me a good story. You're telling me that a girl believed that her father was having an affair with this woman, the wild aunt that shows up every now and then, and in retaliation poisons the woman, only to find out that that was her birth mother, and she goes insane. It snaps her brain. There's so many great angles and so many great ways to tell it, and that makes it the enduring story. Like, you can tell that story over and over again, and it will always get the same kind of response. The beats, the places of it. I am before Ghost Hunter, before a paranormal enthusiast, before anything else, I am a storyteller, and I love Lottie's story because it elementally, it's just well constructed. It's a well constructed story.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely.
What is the like? Let's go around Forsyth. So we were just on Whitaker.
And
we're just on
Gwinnett.
Whitaker.
In Hall Street.
Street.
Yeah,
West
Whitaker
Hall.
and Hall. Now where are we headed? We're headed south.
Well, we've talked about Sentient Bean briefly. There's nothing really super.
But right next to Sentient Bean.
Is the Mary Telfair?
Oh, Mary Telfair. So, Mary Telfair is an interesting.
I'm gonna go turn on the air conditioning.
Absolutely. So Mary Telfair is an interesting woman in general because she was such a staunch woman.
Oh yeah.
She was very particular about her rules and things like that. And a lot of these, if you go on ghost tours, they'll tell you about how she hated actresses and she hated all these things.
Alcohol. She hated alcohol.
Yeah, she kind of has become like the woman in Savannah that has just been like the negative old lady that bickers about things.
Very stern matriarch of Savannah.
Yeah, and so one of the rules that actually is true that she did leave behind in her will was that at the Mary Telfair Hospital, if you were born, because it was a lot of mothers giving birth there, obviously it was a women's hospital. So if you were born a girl, you were given as much time as you needed to, you know, like with your mom, to recover from the birth and like get any kind of treatments you may need. But if you're born a boy, as by rules from Mary Telfair, you have 3 days to get out of the hospital. And I've actually, I swear, this is a real thing. Richard Cheeley, a former coworker of mine, he was born in the Mary Telfair Hospital. And
Richard was born there.
Yep, and he told me about that because, you know, I would tell this story on the ghost tour. I'm like, is this really a thing? And he's like, yes, I was born there and I had to be gone in 3 days. And that is by rule of Mary Telfair, which
it was a women's hospital, and she meant that 100%.
Yes.
It was to spend none of its resources on treating or caring for any male patient.
And there's a lot of theories as to why Mary Telfair didn't like men and things like that. And a part of it was this long-standing story that her sister was having an affair with her husband, and she had to live in the house with both of them and all that, and maybe that's why she doesn't like men. But
which ties into the Lottie story too.
It does.
That concept of brother cheating on wife.
Yes.
With sister.
This building's on Park Street and Drayton, right? Like that intersection, or is it just on Park?
No, it's Park and Drayton.
It is Park and Drayton.
It's Park and Drayton.
Yeah. Between Bull and Drayton.
Okay. Okay.
But,
although, yeah, if you're on Drayton, you're standing right next to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and what it is nowadays is actually a old folks home.
Is it?
Yeah, it's an apartment complex for elderly people.
Yeah, assisted livings.
So,
yeah.
so what makes this joint haunted?
Just the fact that it's a hospital in general oftentimes makes things haunted.
And that it was a women's hospital exclusively, because the medical field, even to this day, it has not really been great to women. The care that women receive, even the knowledge of what women need medically is oftentimes overlooked. People, dismiss things as hysteria. They will not address medical conditions, and that was, worth believing that Mary Telfair instituted the hospital because of the disconnect, because of the kind of care that was missing in a lot of ways.
I see.
Not to mention the famous Morgue Tunnels that we talk about a lot. There was a drop down, and I want to say as late as 99, 2000, there was a grate that you could go in the parking lot of where the Mary Telfair is, that you could just drop down into a tunnel.
Sure.
Savannah has since sealed it up. I think Savannah has sealed all
They
effective.
yeah, it sucks. What jerks?
In many
They
cases,
even put like a chain door so
Well-
they can like let us in and not other people.
in many cases, it is where the conduit wire and the electric and all of that is for the city. So it would be easy to go down into the tunnels and really muck up.
I know, but why do they have to seal it? Why can't they just like lock it off?
I want to say that if you're an electrician, if you work for the water company, or you work for, you could
I'm
probably
getting ideas.
You could probably drop down into any number of manholes and
Really?
I would
Probably.
imagine, because all those.
Y'all, I'm
were you
gonna get
around?
arrested.
Oh my
Well,
God.
were you around when the Bull Street manholes were blowing up?
The Bull Street Man? No.
So there was a
When
period
did
of
that
time,
happen?
I guess it was in the mid-aughts, when we had minor explosions under Bay Street. And so right around Bull Street, the manhole covers
like
just
pressure or fire?
it was, just pressure.
Pressure.
And I think it was like a gas situation.
Gotcha.
Wow.
But it shot these things up into the air. So, yeah.
Wow.
Do you think it's because, like, how sometimes when you have people who are buried in the ground improperly and the gases build up from decomposition, they explode? Do you think it could have been because of all those bodies?
I don't think
Down
so,
below?
because I believe the explanation was just
Fun explanation.
It is.
a straight up gas leak.
Okay.
Not the right type of
Not
gas.
the right type of gas.
Boring.
not the decomposition gas.
Next.
And mind you, those tunnels are well, bricked. So
So they still are there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite things is when they do like major work around that area. You can usually look down and you'll be able to see these wonderful arches.
No way.
Well preserved and with the names of the streets on them. And I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like, have you ever seen a movie where people drop down and they're running around the sewers with a flashlight and it's these big tunnels?
Yeah.
That's what it is down there.
That's what it is. And you've been down there.
I have been to 2 sites locations. One was right at the end of City Market, and one was the Morgue Tunnels.
So wait, they go all the way to City Market?
Yeah, they're all over Savannah.
Well,
Okay,
so
how deep are
those
they?
aren't Morgue Tunnels.
Oh.
The tunnels that I'm talking about are the Commerce Tunnels.
Okay.
Those are the ones that they're basically the basement level. Like, I want to even say if you went down on Bay Street, there are a couple of restaurants where you can go down into the basement and you'll actually see.
Yeah.
You're talking like Blue Moon. Not Blue Moon. What am I talking about?
Yeah, Moon River.
It's kind of like when you're going where the ramps are for trolleys and bigger vehicles to come down to get down onto River Street. Those are a lot of times where those tunnels kind of were.
Okay. Yeah, and you can actually see them if you're on Factor's Walk. You can usually see like the bricked-in pattern of these like doorways and things that just go into the street.
All right, so let's give the people what they want. We know why you're here. It's to hear about the Morgue Tunnels.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why I'd be here. All right, so the Morgue Tunnels. First off, how deep are they? When you're standing on Forsyth playing Frisbee with your dog, how far are we from dead bodies?
They're basement level. They're literally a thin layer between the ground and where the tunnels were. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
So you're like, what, 6-7 feet from them?
Yeah.
From the top of them?
You're not far
You're
from
not even
it.
that far, I would say.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's true.
It's just they're not super well documented around Forsyth because Forsyth was always meant to be as this really beautiful place for people.
And interestingly enough, like if you go to Forsyth, there's like a band shell there now, and behind it is a building that was a cafe. And we always called it the Old Fort. And the reason why I called it the Old Fort was because the way that Savannah, the Forsyth Park is laid out is they made it so that the military could do drills attacking a fort. So they would run down the long stretch where everybody plays Ultimate Frisbee. They would run down that long stretch to attack the fort. So the army would do these drills where you're defending the fort and attacking the fort. And then they'd switch them out, attack the fort, defend the fort. And for the longest time, the fort was just this empty, and the city of Savannah used it for like storage of, goods. But that was one of the main designs too, was to train the army of the nearby Fort Pulaski, Fort Jackson. They would practice attacking and defending a fort.
Wow.
And they would also do like parade stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, Savannah also, if you look at old photos of Forsyth, it was heavily forested. Like there were a lot of trees on Forsyth Park too.
Yeah.
So,
Now, there's got to be so where you're talking about with that building, unless it turns off, if it goes straight into Forsyth, because of where we know an entrance is in the mansion.
Yes.
Right? We do know that. You've seen it, we've seen it. And that is directly across for Drayton from that from the building you're talking about. So I wonder if it goes straight.
They actually moved from the buildings to the tunnel because the tunnels jut from. So you've got Candler and the Forsyth Mansion. They didn't do this. They actually went here under Forsyth, back. So that's how they got there.
Okay.
The actual tunnel, like if you drop down, I can dig up some pictures from the tunnel, the Morgue Tunnel from Candler.
Yeah.
Because you walk away from Candler across the street.
Sure, across the street.
And when I went down in it, they had already sealed up right at the street.
Sure.
And they did not do a good job. The seal job is not like they made a wall. They just put like slabs on top of each other haphazardly.
Oh boy.
And
that's
so it's like
Savannah way.
Yeah, it was weird because it almost felt like they were trying to make steps.
Yeah.
Because they were not on top of each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't a flush wall. Very bizarre, really.
All right. So what were they used for? I know we're calling them morgue tunnels, but let's tell everyone why they're there.
So they were there for a couple different purposes. So they were mostly meant to transport bodies out of the between the hospitals. Obviously, you don't want to take a dead body on the main street where all the other citizens are and things like that. That's very grotesque. So they wanted to keep it underground, but eventually, they would run out of space for the amount of dead that they had, especially during yellow fever, that they needed a place to store the bodies. So what did? They put it in the morgue tunnels. It was like a perfectly built spot to keep all these bodies, and it kind of became a mass grave of sorts.
Wow.
And it's funny because a lot of people get married right in front of the mansion and like right over by the fountain where the Candler Hospital is, which is right on top of a ton of dead bodies.
LOL.
Which nobody really realizes it because you can't tell that it's a mass grave. There's no marker for it or anything like that that says like here lies a bunch of yellow fever patients. You know,
till death do them part. When really death is right in between them.
It was literally just meant as a dumping ground, kind of, because they're like, well, we can just seal it up, you know, if it gets too full.
Right. This would be the 1870s.
Okay, so they're not that old.
I think.
No.
Talking like 150 years old, huh?
Yeah, about.
That's not old in Savannah.
No, it's not.
Savannah.
No, that was the last known epidemic, but it was the one that that the Candler facilities got overrun. And they got so overrun that apparently there was a period of time when the bodies were outside, like just kind of piling up outside.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, we can't have that.
That sounds, again, like Savannah.
And that's where they were like, let's move them into the tunnels, you know, because originally the tunnel was not expressly, it was not for lots of bodies.
Yeah.
You know, it was the body, you know, let's take it to the funeral home, which was about a block up. Let's transfer them from the Mary Telfair Hospital to either the funeral home. Sometimes they would move the sick through the tunnels just to keep them off of the street, bring them down and through from Telfair to Candler, back and forth. But still, it was the rash decision to put the bodies there where we'll address it later. And then when they chose to address it, they just sealed them. They just sealed them shut.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's why they're sealed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a biohazard.
And when did they see? Like what year did they seal it?
The last one was when Savannah Law closed, right?
When did they? The reasons why they sealed it is to stem dark tourism.
Oh, us.
You know, yes.
They don't want us down there.
Well, yeah. When I first arrived here, there were people who would still drop into the tombs, and we call them tombs. They're more like mausoleums, but they're in the ground at Colonial Park Cemetery.
Well, I wouldn't be doing that.
There are still people knocking holes in them and climbing into them and pulling stuff out.
Oh Lord!
You know, and you know, it
ruined it for everybody.
It did.
That's the general.
So
we'd be so respectful in those morgue tunnels. We'd be so respectful. We wouldn't
trust
too
you,
much.
JT.
What? I'd be filming.
He's like,
I just
look, a femur bone. We should take this off.
I definitely would not touch a bone. I would not touch a bone. You guys obviously don't know me. No,
You're a loose cannon,
You're
JT.
a loose cannon. I don't know. I don't think you know yourself.
I mean, I might get a little lit, whatever, but I would mainly be shooting. Everything is for filming for me.
Yeah.
You're like, Madison, try to talk to them. I'm like,
reconstruct the body.
Yeah.
Put it back together. It's interesting because there was a lot of like urban spelunking, you know, people who would love to go down into the tunnels. Not for damage, not for harm or anything, but the liability is so huge.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, if you think River Street's cobblestones are ridiculous, try going to, you know, this weird, unkempt tunnel.
yeah.
And just the odds of someone hurting themselves are too high.
Sure.
And people are reckless, and they usually go down drunk. So
yeah.
So that seems to be the case of sealing off.
It needs to be what it needs to be is they shouldn't have sealed it off. They should have. I'm gonna reiterate this. They shouldn't have sealed it off. They should have really locked it up, and then they should let experts like us go down there for reasons to show for
historical
reasons.
But again,
historical, personal.
These are now the
reasons.
sewers of Savannah.
Yes, sure.
On top of everything else.
What?
These
what do you mean
the
they're
sewers.
the sewers?
They're the sewers. Where do you think the toilet goes?
No, wait, I'm confused. Wait, so the sewers.
They used all the tunnels.
Bro.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, of course.
So they're now poop?
Yeah.
That's so messed up.
Yeah.
And bones.
Poop and bones. Poop and bones. It's not messed up. It's better than having it in the house. It's better than having it in the building.
Septic tank much? Or not even that. I mean, build something else.
Okay, but here's the thing: is it's so hard to put a septic tank into downtown Savannah because of the way it's built.
Heard. But why are they using like a burial ground as?
Have you been here? We do things like that all the time.
And for the most part,
we're so disrespectful.
It's not all burial grounds. It's a bunch of tunnels. And when you're like, we need to put a big pipe that will shovel all the poo to the poo place, they were quick to be like, use the tunnel.
We're historically known for disrespecting our graves. So it's on brand to make it.
When we speak of conditions of haunting, the number one condition of haunting in the entire world is disrespect to the dead, desecration of grave. Anywhere in the world, if you disrespect the dead or desecrate a grave, you're guaranteed a ghost. That is just the most common belief as to why the dead bother the living. The first one that you come to is, well, don't desecrate a grave. In some cultures, whistling in a graveyard will get you a ghost. Standing on a grave,
grave dancing. I love that movie.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And because the idea is that you disturb the rest of the spirit, and the spirit will come back vengeful and angry. So
fair enough.
And fair enough. So when you think of,
so we're covering all those people in poop.
Yes.
And
so
on brand.
It is on brand. But when we talk about the dead, they are in very specific areas. They are not everywhere. They're just, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So if we went down there right now, it would smell like poop.
No, I'm pretty sure they use like, pipes of some type.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So it's not just they're just running stuff
it's not
down.
Just raw suit. Well,
okay.
But it might be. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's definitely some
we were
leaks
not there when the sewage infrastructure was put in.
All right. Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
We're not experts on civil engineering. So.
Let's move on. Chris, do you know, or Madison, you might also know this. I've said Chris mainly because I associate him with having seen the majority of this. But how are the bodies in there? Like are they in the walls? Are they?
So it's very interesting because the morgue tunnel where I was just the morgue. Yeah. It wasn't the morgue tunnel. I say I went down into the morgue tunnel. What I actually dropped into was the morgue that opened up into the tunnel.
Okay.
And on the walls they had these metal brackets that would pull out, and I imagine that was to lay a cot on.
Oh.
So the bodies, and they could stack them down under the ground. Mm-hmm. But my guess is the morgue tunnel itself has no such thing.
Yeah.
So in my conversations with other people, the general consensus is they stacked them like bricks. And they actually stopped up the tunnel with bodies. So it was like they were building walls out of bodies.
Jeez.
Yeah. Because the tunnels were also not tall. These are not like, they were not, like, I believe I could reach up and touch the top of it.
Sure.
So, it was not like these were
big dungeony tunnels. They're more like the Parisian tunnels.
People were smaller back then too. So,
yeah.
Bigger than bricks, though.
Yes, bigger than bricks, but definitely short.
Understood.
So, but here's the thing too: is like when you have that many bodies that you need to get rid of, they're not as concerned about the aesthetic of it. Even though the Victorians and the Edwardian like eras, they're very glamorous and things of that nature. When you have a bunch of rotting flesh on the lawn, essentially, they're gonna just try to get it in as
fast as
possible.
We're talking about dead body Jenga.
Yes.
Dead body
Jenga.
All right.
So.
Y'all, these are great things for the backs of our merch shirts.
Dead body Jenga.
Dead body Jenga.
Ooh, Ghost heroin.
And it's worth noting that there are at least 2 or 3 accounts of bodies piling up around the Candler Oak.
Yep.
You know, because it was also, the Candler Oak was the site of like a triage place during the Civil War.
Sure.
And trying to remember, because it seemed like there was a story in which there was a period of time when the Union soldiers had to be outside and they were being cared for in really horrible conditions. And then when the Union took over entirely at Savannah, they put the Confederate soldiers outside.
Yeah.
and they were being treated really poorly.
You want to talk about a haunted place in Savannah? That Candler Oak has seen some things.
Yeah, tell them what the Candler Oak is.
So the Candler Oak is believed to definitely over 400 years old. It's kind of hard to estimate how old exactly it is, but it's definitely over 400. But like Chris said, it was an area where they had like makeshift, hospital stations. But it also used to be where they hanged people. They would hang African-American people who crossed through Forsyth Park in that tree because it was not allowed. It was illegal for an African-American person to be seen in that park. And if you were, in a lot of places in the South, as a way of showing like this is what you shouldn't do and to scaring people to not do it, they would hang people in the tree and leave them there so that people could see it. So that's already traumatic enough, but then on top of all the other history that it's seen throughout the years, because the tree is older than Savannah itself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's if y'all are trying to find it, it's on Drayton and Gaston.
Yeah, it's literally here's the Candler Hospital, here's the Candler Oak. If you're on Drayton Street, you can't miss it. It's a massive live oak. So it's
the largest building on the side is the Candler building.
Yeah.
Now that Candler building, that's haunted.
Well, that was the Candler Hospital.
Yeah,
so.
tell me about that. Actually, I've heard you talk about a lot of this stuff, Madison, and I've learned a lot over the years. But I don't know much about the Candler Hospital. Tell me a little about that.
When you deal with hospitals at all, you are dealing with the final moments of people going through incredible stresses and incredible fear, and of course you're dealing with over 100 years of growing medical practice. So treatment was rough and harsh, and survival of common ailments was low. So lots of people died. I have a ghost story from Candler Hospital when I was producing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and we needed a gurney for the set. And the Candler Hospital had been a mental institution for years, but it had shut down and it was empty. But all the beds and all the stuff was still in the building. You could just go. So we contacted, whoever it was that we needed to contact, and they were like, "Yeah, you can come and get a gurney." Most of the gurneys are on the 3rd floor, and so we're like, "Okay, great, yeah, we'll come." And we show up, and it's me and my friend Russell. And we show up, and they're like, "Yeah, the electricity's not on, so you're gonna have to go through the building." And it was late in the afternoon, turning into evening, and we're like, "Sure." So we're going up to this 3rd floor, and it was this amazingly spread out building, and it was so creepy because, like, when we got to the 3rd floor, it was pretty much night, and the only light that we would get was hitting us from the street lights, hitting through a window, and then through the doors. So you look down the hall, and it's like a bit of light, black darkness, a bit of light, black darkness, a bit of light. And so we're walking down and just kind of like looking around, trying to find this gurney. And we're like, okay, they said they were on this floor. Turns out it was on the absolute farthest end of the hall. We had to go all the way down, and there's a room full of these hospital beds. And we're like, oh, okay, we got a hospital. We're gonna leave now. And so we start leaving. And as we're leaving, out of the corner of my eye, I see what looks like. Now I'm 6'4", Russell's 6'6". I see something that looks bigger than both of us.
Oh,
Lord!
And bald head, wearing what looked like a hospital gown. So like we're running, and I see it out of the corner of my eye. It's like we're in the dark. Something walked through the light of the doorway as we're going down the hallway, and it's now in the dark again. So I'm like, "There's somebody in here," and Russell's like, "No, don't worry about it, man." Like,
yeah,
I just saw something, and so we start moving a little faster down the hall. And as we move faster, we start hearing the flap of bare feet on the linoleum, flap, flap, flap. Russell's still denying that there's anyone there. Me thinking I'm seeing something coming at us, so I'm running at full speed, and we're both running. We end up like riding the gurney down the stairs, and we get out. We get the bed out, and we call the hospital, and we're like, okay, we took a gurney. Is there anybody in there? Is anybody there? And they're like, no, but a lot of people talk about up on the 3rd floor. There was a killer because it was a psych ward for a long time. There was a killer who he used to crush people to death. He used to hug them to death. He used to hug children to death.
Oh,
and I was like, what? And it was like, yeah. And people say that they still see him in that on that 3rd floor. I was like, you didn't think to tell us? And it was like, well, it's not real. The guy's like, it's not true.
Renee Ash.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed to be a Renee Ashish-like thing, but somebody told me that it was a man named Frederick Finn? It was like a 1940s...
Finn?
Finn, I believe.
All right.
But I mean,
Do some Googling.
Old Fred.
Never found him. Never found any stories about it.
Oh, you Googled him already?
Yeah, I looked him up because I'm like,
yeah.
But I remember very distinctly that, it was a very big figure. He was bald, and it looked like he was wearing a gown. He might have been wearing a doctor's robe. I mean, a doctor's jacket, for all I know.
Wow.
Because I did not get a solid look at him, and it was more of an impression. But man,
Yeah, I find with psych hospitals in general, especially ones that are before, the like 1950s and stuff like that, you oftentimes get these spirits that are so aggressive, whenever you go into like places like the Transylvania lunatic asylum and things like that. The reason why they're so aggressive is think about the treatments that these people went through in their lifetime. Because mental illness was obviously not seen as anything that, how it is now, where it's actually like treatable with medications and stuff. They were basically using people with mental illnesses as lab rats. And so they do these horrible treatments to people. So of course we're going to get these spirits in the afterlife that are so aggressive and so violent. Yeah. Especially even if they had violent tendencies in their lifetime, when you torture somebody, it makes a lot of sense that would affect them and their energy.
It's worth noting that in asylums, you're dealing with people who are struggling with reality as it is. So their reality might encompass a lot of what we would assume to be just these horrific and bizarre scenarios.
Sure.
So, when they're released from the form that trapped them in our reality, and their mind is free to exist in their own reality, that reality is not going to look like ours. The way that they interact with people, what they intend to do, how they perceive their treatment, all those things, because they are usually not necessarily working on the same perceptive ability that everyone else has. And so when they pass, a lot of times those perceptive abilities are all they have left.
Yeah.
Or how they saw the world when they died. And then everybody becomes the tormentor. Everybody becomes, the one that locked them up, the one that kept them from their path.
So what am I missing? We've talked about a couple different hauntings around Forsyth. What what else is there?
We got the mansion.
Yeah,
The mansion.
The mansion.
Duh.
The
The
old
mansion.
funeral home.
The old Fox and Weeks funeral home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about a little bit about
We
that
did
in a
touch
couple
upon that.
episodes
Yeah,
ago.
absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else other than the mansion that like stands out to y'all about? Is the fountain haunted?
No, it's just full of germs. But
So they actually clean the crap out of
One of
that.
my favorite things about the Forsyth Park fountain, it is by and far just an amazing fixture of Savannah. You'll see it in all these postcards. You'll see all this wonderful stuff, and lots of people place a lot of emphasis and beauty. You know, this is the Low Country. This is, you know, it was ordered from the Sears Roebuck's catalog.
Yeah,
it was literally. And we say Sears Roebuck's catalog, but it came from the Sears Roebuck's company. It was, and I want to say there's one other of this same fountain, maybe in Illinois, somewhere.
No way.
Yeah, because it was ordered. It
Yeah.
was bought. It was like we need a central fountain.
Wait,
and they
that
bought it
fountain
from,
somewhere else?
Yeah, it's a cast fountain. It's not. It was not made for Forsyth Park. It was bought for Forsyth Park.
Yeah.
Oh man, sorry to ruin it, y'all.
Yeah. Well, it's no less magical. It's a
It's
beautiful
still
fountain.
beautiful.
It really does. It accentuates that park really beautifully. And it's so interesting because when you look at it, you're like, oh, you know, they're like fishmen with horns, and there's like,
Yeah, it's
you know,
cool.
turtles because this is the Low Country, and there's like egrets because this is the Low Country. I was like, but apparently somewhere in the Northwest, somebody else bought it and then thought,
Apparently.
this is us. Look at this.
Wow.
Doesn't it just say us? Doesn't it just scream us? I was like,
Yeah.
do we have mer people around here?
Right?
Are there mer people?
Well, we have manatees, and you know, manatees were at one point believed to
Yeah.
possibly be what sailors were.
saw.
Yeah,
And we're like, hey, that looks good.
you know, just a floating blob being like me. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and end the episode talking about the mansion on Forsyth. Then
absolutely.
let's talk a little bit about that. You know, we talked about the ghost girl that we saw. I don't think we talked about the tower story though. Like,
the tower story.
isn't there like a story about a girl locked up in the tower, and like maybe that's who you saw, or
So she wasn't locked up in the tower.
Okay, right.
That was her bedroom.
Yeah.
that was just her bedroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
The interesting thing about the tower, though, if you go by the Forsyth Park Mansion, and you look up, sometimes you'll see a light up in the very tower part. What isn't readily knowable is that is not an accessible place.
Oh.
Like I worked security there, and we tried to find that light, find the light bulb.
Oh wow.
And the only way I could get to it was like through a series of weird I had to climb up into this area. I'll never forget because I ripped my very expensive jacket trying to get to it, and it was not in a place that would make sense. There's no light switch to it. It had a bare chain.
Really?
On it, and I turned it off.
Oh wow.
And went back down, and I want to say about a month later, it was on again. And I cannot imagine or fathom who would go up there and who would turn it on for what reason. But it's one of those things where you're like, I wonder what that was. And conceptually, the room that it looks like a castle tower.
Yeah.
You know, it's this big round thing. And according to legend, it was built for a little girl to be a princess room, like to resemble a princess room, and it went straight up into the eaves. So it might have been conceptually where the light would have been, and I never understood it because it's a weird place to put a light. Regardless, it didn't help you once you were up in that round space. It was so far away and didn't shine light on anything. So it was like, I don't know why it's here. I don't know why anybody would put that there. And maybe at one time, because there was a huge air conditioning, vent system there. And so maybe at one time there wasn't that there. And so it was a more accessible room. But when we went up there, it isn't. So every time I see it, I think that the little girl is probably up there playing.
For sure.
Possibly. But I will say, too, if you've ever been in the Forsyth Park Mansion, it's so disorienting. Just the way the building is constructed, it's like a maze connected between two towers. And so in just that, it feels weird when you're in there because it just feels like you're almost like walking through like like one of those mirror mazes. It feels like that. Like you feel like, okay, like I can't remember which way I came, where I'm going.
It is very odd because conceptually it's a very easy pattern because it's like kind of an H, but it's true. While you're walking there, and it doesn't help that like some of the paintings are very abstractly strange. So as you're walking, you're like, am I moving away from the front of the building or am I moving towards? It's just, it does. It's very distracting. Also, they put the spa in the basement. And so the spa there is at night a very freaky place. To be under the ground, you know, the spa and all the corporate offices are down under the ground. And so that whole area becomes very mausoleum-like, very tomb-like.
Well, you're on level with where
you're directly across.
Where the morgue would be, so.
Yeah. No,
you were going to say, Jeff?
Yeah, we actually have photo. We have a photo. I don't know if I've showed it to you yet, Chris, but the Southern Inspector sent us. He has his own podcast, and he's actually going to be our guest not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday on the 6th. He's going to be our guest, and he took a photo of the mansion, and he said, "You see the ghost girl up in the window." And so, you know, I looked at it, and it did not look photoshopped. It did look like a little girl was like peeking down and all of that. She's kind of hard to see. I was going to put it in Lightroom and manipulate it a little bit, but then I looked down and across to like a couple windows down and then across, and I see another little girl. I'm not kidding. Like another little girl. I'm like, have you ever seen this little girl in this photo? And he goes, no, I've just been so, you know, consumed by the one that you see first. So there's two little girls looking out of a window at the same time.
That's
different windows in different rooms. It's like a double ghost. So be sure to check that one out because we're actually, one of the reasons he's coming here is to talk about that photo.
Excellent. Cool.
So it's going to be pretty cool.
Well, I mean, like, it's very fair that, you know, another little girl could have died, or not died, but like, you know,
it was a funeral home. So any number of reasons why a dead child would be in a funeral home, because I believe the girl in the bedroom is most likely a family member that lived in the house. But that does not exclude any other, you know, child who might have been laid to rest there, who had their final, you know, visitation there, who, you know, the last time she was with her family would be in the funeral home. And that's something about funeral homes that a lot of people forget, is that while the person died in a hospital or, you know, in an accident somewhere else, the last time that the family really views them or is close to them or really gets to have FaceTime with them in many instances is at the funeral home.
Okay. So just to end it real fast, I know that there's a building on Gaston and Whitaker, just to kind of go around Forsyth in entirety here. Gaston and Whitaker.
The Oglethorpe Club?
Is that what that is?
The green
it's like
awnings?
It's this really pretty building.
Oh, the Armstrong house.
They're renovating it.
So,
is that place haunted at all?
The big white house?
There's a lot of stories about the Armstrong house. The big white house?
Yeah, the one with the statues out front?
It's Gaston and Whitaker, exactly.
Okay.
Like when you're looking right there, and it's being renovated.
Technically Gaston and Bull.
Yeah.
It goes to Gaston and Whitaker. It's that whole block.
Oh no, not the Armstrong house.
Oh, okay.
No, it's Whitaker. It's Whitaker and
you're
the
talking
Georgia
about
Historical Society?
Yes.
You're talking about Historical Society.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
There you go. The Georgia Historical Society is a great resource and place to go. As a matter of fact, a lot of the articles and a lot of stories that I come from, hours and hours and hours of me sitting there reading newspaper articles, reading.
They have all that.
Yeah, they have it online too. Yeah.
Do they?
They do.
Oh, well, most of my search was in the 90s. There was no online. I'm just now realizing, what was I doing? It was not digitized.
It is now, though.
And I would dare say, because I have been back, I went back in, I want to say 2013, that I could not find a lot of the documents that I had found in the 90s. Most specifically.
People stole them?
I think they're just being held.
Oh.
Because most specifically it was all those tunnels that we were just talking about. They used to have maps. and now
They
those
don't want
maps are gone.
They don't want people
Or
seeing
at
it.
least not readily available for just somebody walking off the street.
Sure.
That makes sense.
So that building's not haunted. What about the Armstrong?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's not haunted.
Everything's haunted here.
Well, the beauty thing about an archive of history is that it is where people's histories are discussed and thought about, where they speak of. A lot of their artifacts, their personal belongings are in that building. A lot of letters that they wrote, handwritten letters. A lot of personal effects are in that building, and that is an ideal situation for haunting.
Okay. Absolutely. The for the Armstrong house, if you'd like to hear anything about it, the Armstrong house was at one point Jim Williams's office. At some point,
It was his lawyer's office.
That's it. That's what it was.
Well, yes. Yeah.
They actually shot that in the movie.
They did.
Yes, they did.
I remember seeing it. I was
my
like,
sister was the receptionist.
Was she really?
Yes, she was. They didn't get any of her from here. You see the back of her head, and she has the line, "He's here," and you can hear her say, "He's here."
No way.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, some people like to think that Jim Williams still haunts that house. There's like 3 places where people say that Jim Williams haunts.
The college. The original site of the Armstrong College was that building as well.
Okay.
Armstrong set it to be a school.
Yeah.
So it was a school, and there's a story of them having like a military ball or something, and a soldier, and they're all wearing swords, and one soldier stabbed another soldier at the party, which was their play sword fighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of them got stabbed, and I want to say people say that guy died, and that sometimes you'll see a soldier ghost there, but I always thought that was a funny little bit, because you imagine you're 17, 18 years old, and they give you a sword.
Yeah.
And then you go to a party with a bunch of other 17, 18-year-olds.
You're going to be fighting.
Yeah.
You're going to be fighting
somebody's
with that
going to
sword.
lose an eye at the very least.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is don't stab your friends.
Do not stab your friends.
Yes.
I'm all about that. Excellent.
But this is a good episode. The Forsyth Park is just such an interesting place to be.
It's beautiful. It's surprisingly peaceful and serene
for what it's built on.
For what it's built on, and for all the stories that we just told you, it is
gorgeous.
A lot of the downtown citizens just really love to spend time there.
Absolutely. So definitely go visit it, and definitely check out some of the places we talked about. Definitely stay at the Forsyth Park Inn if you're looking for that small, quaint little bed and breakfast sort of situation. If you like the idea of sleeping on top of a morgue, then Forsyth Mansion is for you. So, so there's your options. But we will be back in another episode with, we're going to be talking about different stuff from West Virginia. We're going to have the sub-inspector on talking about about his photo. Also, make sure to check us out on Patreon if you want to support us in that way so that we can do even bigger and better things and travel to places. So if you do want to support us there, we're patreon.com/Savannah Underground. You can follow us on TikTok at the Savannah Underground, and then also on Instagram at Savannah Underground. So, Chris, do you have anything that you want to use as a ghost tip today?
Sure. Worth noting that ghost hunting, in my estimation, works better in cold weather. Going out in cold weather, you are more likely to find or attract spirits because spirits will use warmth as a form of energy, and they will pull it right out of the air when it's present, but when it's not present, they will come for you because you will be the source of heat.
Wow. That's a very, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. That makes a lot of sense for the Davenport house. But that, again, we'll talk more about the Davenport in another day. But with that note, I'm Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And stay spooky, y'all.